Recording in.
All right, good morning. We're going to do a new section today, and this is one of the last sections. I only got to read a couple sentences of this, but it seems like it's going to be very interesting. Like I said, I haven't read this in over a year. I guess it was about a year, maybe last April. But it's like reading it. It's like I never read it, and it's like reading it all over again and learning completely new things. So let's get into this here. We come now to a brief study of the third aspect of illusion, to which we give the name Maya, and to the technique which can overcome it. We will deal with the technique of indifference, which is concerned with the distribution of soul force upon the physical plane via the etheric plane, leading to inspiration. This is related to the science of the breath. Give me just 1 second. So I was just I wanted to close a few programs out, but anyway, this here was interesting as well. I had to read it again. It's concerned with the distribution of soul force upon the physical plane via the etheric plane, leading to inspiration. This is related to the science of the breath. And hopefully we're going to find out exactly what is meant here. I'm not exactly sure. The etheric planes are the Buddhic planes and above. And, we'll see. What then is Maya? This, my brother, is not easy to define because it is related to the form building activity of the planetary logos himself. However, a consideration of the analogy existing between the microcosm and the macrocosm may help somewhat. The soul creates a threefold expression in the three worlds of human living. This is an occult truism. The soul creates a threefold expression in the three worlds of human living. The outer form, the dual physical body, dense and vital or etheric, okay, the etheric, we're talking about here, the etheric body. The dual physical body, okay, is produced, created, motivated, energized, and conditioned by certain energies and forces emanating from those levels whereon the soul has, rightly or wrongly, engineered a reaction of identification. Note this phrase, my brother. These make the man what he is. They give him his temperament, profession, and quality upon the physical plane. They make him negative or positive to various types of impacting energy. They give him his character and make him what he appears to be to others. They produce his coloring, his capacities, and his personality. With all of these, the average man identifies himself. He believes himself to be the form, the medium through which he attempts to express his desires and his ideas. This complete identification with the transient creation and with the outer appearance is Maya. That is a level of at-one-ment as well, right? As we had discussed earlier. So if we go back up to the top real quick, just because for whatever reason, I got hung up on this via the etheric plane. It's literally talking about the physical etheric, or the etheric body, the vital body. The scaffolding that's holding all of this together, all the physical plane together, I suppose. Okay. And we get stuck. We're stuck and we think this is us, right? This temperament percentage. We identify with that. He believed himself to be the form, the medium through which he attempts to express his desires and his ideas. This complete identification with the transient creation, with the outer appearance, is Maya. It must be remembered that individual Maya is a fractional part of the world of energies and forces which constitute the life expression of the planetary logos, which condition our outer planetary life and make our planet what it appears to be to the other planets. This complete identification with the transient creation. Okay. That's Maya. Got it. This is definitely worth contemplating right here. This is a big paragraph. There's a lot going on there again. The difference between man, the microcosm, and the planetary logos, the Lord of the world, the macrocosm, lies in the fact that the Lord of the world is not identified with the Maya, which he has created, and which has its purpose in eventually bringing about the release of the prisoners of the planet. To that Maya, he is supremely indifferent. And it is this divine indifference which has led to the great theological illusion of an anthropomorphic deity and to the belief in the East that our planet is but the background or the plaything of the gods. It is this cosmic indifference which has led to the human glamour concerning the inscrutable will of God and to the affirmation that God is far away and not immanent in every creature and in every atom of which creatures are made. These are some aspects of the glamours and illusions which must be dispelled and dissipated, and in the process, discovery will be made that the form is only Maya and can be disregarded, that forces can be organized and directed by energy, and that the world of thought, the field of sentient consciousness, and the playground of the energies are something apart from the thinker, from the one who feels, and from the actor and player of the many parts which the soul undertakes to play. The disciple learns eventually to know himself to be above everything else while in incarnation, the director of forces. These he directs from the altitude of the divine observer and through the attainment of detachment. These are things which I have often told you before. Absolutely. And these truths are for you only the platitudes of occultism. And yet, if you could but grasp the full significance of detachment and stand serene as the observing director, there would be no more wasted motion, no more mistaken moves, and no more false interpretations, no wandering down the bypaths of daily living, no seeing others through distorted and prejudiced vision, and above all, no more misuse of force, which is really the sin, essentially, right? Like that's our sin, if you ask me. Energy follows thought, and misuse of force down these highways and byways and side streets and alleys, and down these rabbit holes, falling down these wells, all these different ways to put it. That's where we're wrong, essentially. But it's getting to this point of being the serene, observing director. That's a pretty big perspective switch. Again and again, down the ages, the masters have told their disciples, as I have told you, that the occultists works in the world of forces. All human beings live and move and express themselves in and through that same world of ever-moving, ever-impacting, outgoing and incoming energies. The occultist, however, works there. He becomes a conscious directing agent. He creates upon the physical plane that which he desires, and that which he desires is the pattern of things and the design laid down upon the trestle board of the spiritual consciousness by the great divine architect. Yet he identifies himself not with the pattern or with the forces which he employs. He moves in the world of Maya, free from illusion, unhindered by glamour, and uncontrolled by the Mayavic forces. He is rapidly arriving, as far as his own little world is concerned, at the same divine indifference which characterizes Sunat Kumara, the Lord of the world. Therefore, increasingly, he becomes aware of the plan as it exists in the universal mind and the purpose which motivates the will of God. It is this divine indifference which is responsible for the fact that in attempting to describe pure being or God, and in the effort to arrive at some understanding of the nature of divinity, the formula of negation has been evolved. God is not this, God is not that, God is no thing, God is neither time nor space, God is not feeling or thought, God is not form or substance, God simply is. God is, apart from all expression and manifestation, as the manipulator of energy, the creator of the tangible and the intangible worlds, the purveyor of life, and the the indweller in all forms. God is the one who can withdraw and, in withdrawing, dispel, dissipate, and devitalize all that has been created using those words in the fullest significance. Still. It will be obvious to you, therefore, that in these three activities of that reality, which is not identified with appearance, the will of God, the destroyer aspect of deity, is beneficently present. The act of abstraction produces the dispelling of the illusory world of thought. The withdrawal of the divine attention dissipates the sentient universe and brings glamour to an end. The cessation of divine direction brings death to the physical world. All these activities are evidences of the will, or of the first aspect, the will to good, which can and will function in perfection only when goodwill is finally and fully developed on earth through the agency of humanity. This is very, this is all worthy of another read again. And I should certainly be reading this again. I'm going to read this part. The withdrawal of the divine attention dissipates the sentient universe and brings glamour to an end. The cessation of divine direction brings death to the physical world. And all these activities are evidences of the will, or of the first aspect, the will to good, which can and will function in perfection only when goodwill is finally and fully developed on earth through the agency of humanity. The will and the breath, my brother, are occultly synonymous terms. In this statement, you have the clue to the ending of Maya. And I want to say this is on a huge, on the macrocosmic scale here. I mean, we're experiencing the will, I suppose, in each breath, right? That we're vitalized. We have life. We're here right now. I mean, it's here. It's all here. This is God. It is vital currently. God is not this thing or that thing. He's not. God is no thing, not time or space, not feeling or thought, not form or substance. Just is. God is. Apart from all expression and manifestation, as the manipulator of energy, the purveyor of the life that is being witnessed right now, is the indweller in all forms that are vitalized, obviously, right? It's an impossible to take that away. Really, I mean, this is some deep, this is definitely, great seeds for contemplation. The will and the breath, my brother, are occultly synonymous terms. You have breath, and therefore you have life, and there is God. Follow your breath. Follow the breath. Right. Follow the breath. Follow God. Next, you're really with God at that point, as close as maybe as close as you can be, and without having any other thoughts of it. Essentially, of the whole thing. Now I'm just pondering a bit, but this is while in the body anyway. We can witness this breath on the microcosmic scale. So the above remarks are preliminary to our study of the technique of indifference. It is necessary to point out analogies and to link together the various aspects of related teaching if true perception is to be developed. It is necessary to point out analogies and to link together the various aspects of related teaching if true perception is to be developed. Let us divide our consideration of this subject as follows. 1, activity upon the etheric plane or the world of forces, okay, their distribution and their manipulation. Then we have the science, the science of the breath, the relation of the will and the breath and inspiration. Every breath you take, considered inspired. Then we have the technique of indifference through concentration and through detachment. Concentration absolutely being the key here, and we can, if we're focused on this material right now, I certainly can see that concentration is required, and it's more concentration really ultimately than we're giving to it right now, because I would be. And maybe we're there, but I feel like I might have to be much more quiet and focused to really go deeply into these things. But we're in kind of a nice place right now. We can go deeper. We can go deeper though. We enter now the field of practical occultism. This is not the field of aspiration or the sphere of plan moving forward towards that which is higher and desirable. It is, in some ways, a reverse activity. From the point reached on the ladder of evolution, the disciple stands in spiritual being as far as in him lies, and consciously, deliberately works with the energies in the 3 worlds. He directs them into the etheric body from whatever level he chooses to work, mental, emotional, or from the vital plane itself. He does this in conformity with some visioned idea, some cherished ideal, some sensed divine pattern, some spiritual hope, some consecrated ambition, or some dedicated desire. The etheric body of the individual is, as you know, a part of the etheric body of humanity. All right, we're all connected by the one thread, a part of the etheric body of humanity. And this, in its turn, is an aspect of the etheric body of the planet, which is likewise an intrinsic part of the etheric body of the solar system. It's all connected, right? Literally. Incidentally, in this far-reaching factual relationship, you have the basis of all astrological influences. Man moves, therefore, in a whirlpool of forces of all types and qualities. He is composed of energies in every part of his manifested and unmanifested expression. He is, therefore, related to all other energies. His task is one of supreme difficulty and needs the great length of the evolutionary cycle. With the mass of world energies and systemic forces, we cannot here deal, but we will confine ourselves to the consideration of the individual problem, advising the student to endeavor to extend his understanding of the microcosmic situation to the macrocosmic. So A, force distribution and manipulation upon the etheric plane, okay? We will now assume that the aspirant is aware of the need for him to establish a new and higher rhythm in his physical plane life, to organize his time in obedience to the injunction of his higher self, and to produce consciously and scientifically those effects which, in his highest moments, are presented to him as desirable. He has now a certain amount of knowledge as to the equipment available for his task, and has mastered some facts in the etheric vehicle. The pairs of opposites are clearly seen by him. If he is as yet influenced by one or the other of them, he is aware of a basic disagreement between his vision of goodness and his expression of that goodness. He has learnt that he is a triple reflection of a higher trinity, and that this trinity is, for him, the reality. He understands that mind, emotions, and physical being are intended eventually to manifest that reality. In the last analysis, he knows that if that intermediate aspect of himself, the etheric body, can be controlled and rightly directed, then vision and expression will and must finally coincide. He is also aware that the dense physical body, the outer tangible appearance, is only an automaton, obedient to whatever forces and energies are the controlling factors in the subjective conditioning, the man. It is that physical body to be controlled by emotional force, pouring through the sacral center and producing desire for the satisfaction of the physical appetites, or through the solar plexus, leading to emotional satisfaction of some kind. Is that physical body, okay, this is the question, is that physical body to be controlled by emotional force, pouring through the sacral center and producing desire for the satisfaction of the physical appetites, or through the solar plexus, leading to the emotional satisfaction of some kind? Is it to be responsive to the mind and work largely under the impulse of projected thought? Is it perhaps to be directed by an energy greater than any of these, but hitherto apparently impotent, the energy of the soul as an expression of pure being? Is it to be swept into action under the impulse of sentient reactions, ideas, and thoughts emanating from other human beings? Or is it to be motivated and spurred into activity under the direction of the spiritual hierarchy? Such are some of the questions to which answers must be found. And that's frustrating. I don't mean it. It's like, yeah, I guess. Right. He's putting that on us. This is being put on us. The stage of aspiring, dreaming, and of wishful thinking must now be superseded by direct action and by the careful planned use of the available forces, swept into activity by the breath under the direction of the inner eye and controlled by the spiritual man. All right, obviously we have to read this again. The stage of aspiring, dreaming, and of wishful thinking must now be superseded by direct action and by the careful planned use of the available forces, swept into activity by the breath under the direction of the inner eye and controlled by the spiritual man. Which energies can and must be thus used? What forces must be brought under direction? In what manner can they be controlled? Should they be ignored and so rendered futile by that ignoring? Or are they forces which are needed in the great creative work It will be apparent to you that the first step, it will be apparent to you that the first step the spiritual investigator has to take is to ascertain truly, and in the light of his soul, where exactly is his focus of identification. By that I mean, I'm glad we're going to get, he always covers everything we need to know. It's so great. By that I mean, is his major use of energy to be found upon the mental plane? Is he predominantly emotional and utilizing force from the astral plane the greater part of the time? Can he contact the soul and bring in soul energy in such a manner that it negates or offsets his personality force? Can he thus live like a soul upon the physical plane via the etheric body? If he earnestly studies his problem, this problem, he will in time discover which forces are dominant in the etheric body and will become aware consciously of the times and experience which call for the expenditure of soul energy. This, my brother, will take time and will be the result of prolonged observation and a close analysis of acts and sentient reactions, of words and thoughts. We are here concerned, as you can see, with an intensely practical problem, which is at the same time an intrinsic part of our study, and which will be evocative of basic changes in the life of the disciple. And this is where, I say this all the time, and this is something that should stick with all of us, is that energy follows thought. And we're alluding to this in a much deeper way now. And it's how does this energy follows thought? So how is it going to be directed? Who's the director at this point? What center is directing it? Is the soul directing it? Through which vehicle is it being directed in? Where is it being directed? All these questions kind of come to mind now. So are we taking charge of this or not? And this is the process what we're learning about, essentially how to recognize the process, because we've recognized that energy follows thought. Now we need to recognize this in the implications in a much deeper way, and how to work well with the details of that. He will add to this observation and analysis of the strength of the force or the forces engaged, the conditions which will swing them into action, the frequency of their appearance, indicating to him novelty or habit, and likewise the nature of their expression. In this way, he will arrive at a new understanding of the conditioning factors which work through his vital body and make him, upon the physical plane, what he essentially is. This will prove to him of deep spiritual and significant help. Oh, my mind is spinning right now. I'm not even gonna lie. I went blank. I've been rendered dumb after reading this up here, because it's so very deep. And because it's all on you. It's all on, this is all something that has to be done, essentially. This is the work. This is the education we must give ourselves under inspiration. So I'm going to read this again and see if I can't bring it back to render myself back in the game instead of rendered dumb right now and quiet. All right. He will add to this observation and analysis of the strength of the force, or the force is engaged, the conditions which will swing them into action. Okay. The frequency of their appearance, okay, indicating to him novelty or habit, which we need to make all these higher expressions habit, regular habit in terms of frequency. Under proper conditions that the soul has really outlined. So we have to have the opportunity, we have to create this environment, right? So if we look at it like that, we have to create this environment, we have to create the conditions, we have to put them into use, into expression, inhabit, service, and likewise the nature of their expression. And how are we going to do that? So we have to intelligently use these. This is all intelligent use here. And in this way, we arrive at a new understanding of the conditioning factors, okay, which work through his vital body and make him, upon the physical plane, what he essentially is. And this will prove to him of deep spiritual and significant help upon the physical plane. So we're proving it to ourselves essentially. All right. This period of observation is, however, confined to mental and intelligent observation. Right, got it. That all makes sense because we're doing this intelligently. We just kind of we observe that up top. So it forms the background of the work to be done, right? Giving assurance and knowledge, but leaving the situation as it was. His next step is to become aware of the quality of the forces applied. In ascertaining this, he will find it necessary to discover not only his soul ray and his personality ray, but to know also the rays of his mental apparatus. And his emotional nature. Okay. This will lead necessarily to another period of investigation and careful observation, if he is not already aware of them. When I tell you that to this information, he must add a close consideration of the potencies of the forces and energies reaching him astrologically, you will see what a stern task he has set himself. Surely, oh my goodness. Not only has he to isolate his five ray energies, but he has to allow for the energy of his sun sign as it conditions his personality, and of his rising sign as it seeks to stimulate that personality into soul responsiveness, thus working out soul purpose through personality and cooperation. Boy, oh boy. Can we put all this together? Can we invoke the synthesis of this? All right, let's keep going here. There are therefore 7 factors which condition the quality of the forces which seek expression through the etheric body. All right, there are therefore 7 factors. Okay. The ray of the soul, the ray of the personality, of the mind, of the emotional nature, of the physical vehicle, energy of the sun sign, and influence of the rising sign. So now it's interesting. This is very much covered in rays and initiations as well. You know, you feel lucky when we think we start to grasp our, you know, the soul and personality rays. We got to move on and move to the, you know, emotional nature and physical vehicle. You know, 5 and 7. Yeah. All right. So we're gonna. This is another, you know, intuitive kind of event here. You know, that you have to work through. It's an opportunity. This is an opportunity to, and I want to say it requires a bit, you know, a bit more study as well. And if we're at this point, then we'll, you know, we know, and what that this is the work that we're doing, right? So once, and again, even if we're not at this point, it's still very important to hear and read all these words, to absorb this material, because it will come, I don't want to say come in handy, it will be important later and for all of us. So once, however, these are ascertained and there is some assurance as to their factual truth, the entire problem begins to clarify, and the disciple can work with knowledge and understanding. He becomes a scientific worker in the field of hidden forces. He knows then what he is doing, with what energies he must work, and he begins to feel these energies as they find their way into the etheric vehicle. Oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. This is very telling right here. Now comes the stage, because there's no other way to grasp this, right? But so this is actually common sense. He must work and begins to feel these energies as they make their way through their fear. This is how we understand things. It's through the etheric vehicle and physical plane, right? So now comes the stage wherein he is in a position to find out the reality and the work of the 7 centers, which provide inlet and outlet for the moving forces and energies with which he is immediately concerned in this particular incarnation. He enters upon a prolonged period of observation, of experiment and experience, and institutes a trial and error, a success and failure campaign, which will call for all the strength, courage, and endurance which he is capable. Oh man, is that so true? It's so true. Oh man, that's a long journey. All right, this is, you know, and we don't, it's a long journey. It just continues. This is this experiment and experience and expression and expressing these things. It looks pretty interesting as we watch this, and it does require, I say this, I tell, when I have, you know, more deep conversations with people, it often comes up, you know, the strength and courage that you know, that has to be put in motion. Really, it really does require a lot of strength and courage, and probably in ways that we don't even understand, and I don't understand, and in ways that maybe when you're in it can't be understood even while we're in it, and it can't be seen until we're out of it, in a sense. But then, you know, we're getting ready to cycle in again to the next thing. So that's maybe some abstract talk there, but really incredible stuff we're digging into right here. So broadly speaking, the energy of the soul works through the highest head center, okay, and is brought into activity through meditation and applied aptitude in contact. Okay. The energy of the integrated personality is focused through the Ageless center between the eyes. And when the disciple can identify himself with that and is also aware of the nature and the vibration of his soul energy, then he can begin to work with the power of direction using the eyes as directing agencies. There are, as you have gathered in your studies, 3 eyes of vision and direction at the disposal of the disciple. Okay. So this is awesome. This is such a huge section that, that I'm always looking for something to grab people's attention, to bring them to this material, because I want to share this material because it's so very powerful, and this is something right here that really everyone needs. Every spiritual person needs to see that, be exposed to this and have this instruction if you're serious about it. Right, if we're serious. All right. So we have the inner eye, the single eye of the spiritual man. This is the true eye of vision and involves the idea of duality, of the seer and that which is seen. It is the divine eye. It is that through which the soul looks forth into the world of men and through which direction of the personality takes place. So the soul directs the personality through this inner eye. The right eye is the eye of Buddhi, the eye which is in direct response of relation to the inner eye. Through this eye, the highest activity of the personality can be directed upon the physical plane. You have, therefore, in this connection, a triangle of spiritual forces which can be swept into unique activity by the advanced disciple and initiate. So we have the spiritual eye, the Ajna center, and the right eye. There's a triangle there. And then we're going to talk about another one. So it is through this triplicity, for instance, that the trained initiate works when dealing with a group of people or with an individual. The left eye, the eye of Manas or mind, is the distributor of mental energy under correct control, correct as far as personality purposes are concerned. This eye is also part of a triangle of forces available for the use of the aspirant and the probationary disciple. And here we have the Ajna center, the left eye, and the right eye. Okay, this is something that should make sense to all of us. Spiritual eye, Ajna center, right eye, A, B, C. A, Ajna center, left eye, right eye. And mind direct. Okay, so let's read about this. The inner or divine eye is quiescent and relatively inactive, being only the organ of observation where the soul is concerned, and it is not yet, in the majority of cases, a distributor of directing soul energy. Okay, hold on here. All right, so it's for us to begin to, we have to recognize these energies in ourselves, and it's a really identification or recognition of the use or in us, and then how to use these things. So anyway, let's keep going. Now we're talking about, in this case, in the majority of cases, is not yet in the majority of cases a distributor of directing soul energy. The disciplined, reoriented aspirant, however, integrated and focused. Now this, the Ageless Center is regarding the integrated personality, remember, right? So this is just got another hint here. Integrated and focused in his purified personality is using both Buddhic and monastic force. He is beginning to be intuitional and predominantly mental. It is when these two triangles are under control and are beginning to function properly that the 7 centers in the etheric body are brought under clear direction, become the recipients of the established rhythm of the developed human being, and present consequently an instrument to the soul through which appropriate energies can flow, and the full organization and purpose of a functioning Son of God can be manifested on earth. It's a matter of making this happen, right? Essentially, this process. If we don't do the work, then, what are the, how's it going to happen? Next comes what we have called the stage of direction. The soul, or the integrated personality, is in command on a higher turn of the spiral. The monad is in command, and the personality is simply the agent of spirit. Through the two triangles, or through both of them working synchronously, the centers up the spine, 5 in all, are brought under rhythmic control. Energy is directed into them or through them. They are steadily brought into a beauty of organization, which has been described as a life aflame with God. It is a life of spiritual application and service, wherein the higher triangle is the most potent. The higher triangle, I mean the one we're talking about above as well. The following 3 statements sum up the story of the eventual release of the disciple from the great illusion. All right, so these are pretty big statements here. First, as the soul working through the higher triangle becomes the directing agent, illusion is dispelled. The mind becomes illumined. Second, as the personality, under the growing influence of the soul, works through the second triangle, glamour is dissipated, and the control of the astral nature is broken. Third, as the disciple, working as the soul and as an integrated personality, assumes direction of his life expression, Maya, or the world of etheric energies, becomes devitalized, and only those forces and energies are employed which serve the need of the disciple or the initiate as he fulfills divine intent. You will note that this is all embodied and brought about in the 7-fold work described above. This can be summarized as follows. The disciple discovers the focus of his identification He ascertains the nature of the focus he ascertains the nature of the focus he is in the habit of using, and which perpetually seem to swing him into action. He becomes aware of the strength and frequency of this force expression. All this is carried forward as the mental observer. He becomes conscious of the quality of the forces employed, their ray relation, or their astrological significance. This is a transient feeling activity and is not so basically mental as the previous three stages. He identifies the centers in the etheric body and becomes aware of their individual existence as force agents. The two triangles of vision and direction and the head reach a stage of organization and become A, active and functioning mechanisms, and B, related and functioning as one expressive instrument. This is an objective and subjective activity. The galvanizing of the physical body into activity through the medium of the directing agencies in the head and through the centers up the spine. And the question now arises as to how this is to be brought about. This brings us to our second point. We have the use of this, the science of the breath. And and what's interesting, and this is totally a side note, the science of the breath by, what is it? Ramacharaka. There's a book, The Science of the Breath. And it's available on sacred texts. It was one of the very first occult books I had ever read, or spiritual or esoteric books I've ever read. No idea. It's by Swami Ramacharaka. It's very old, as far as it says 1998. This is ancient stuff, but what a book, man. And it teaches you how to breathe, and then we can see how these things work. It's really incredible. All right, let's get into the use of the science of the breath. There has been a great deal of nonsense talked and taught about the science of the breath. Many groups give a great deal of dangerous instruction about breathing, dangerous because it is based on book knowledge, and its exponents have never practiced it extensively themselves, and dangerous because many groups simply exploit the unready, usually for commercial gain. Fortunately for the mass of aspirants, the information and instruction given are both feeble, inaccurate, and frequently innocuous, though there are many cases of significantly bad reaction. Fortunately also, the purpose of the average aspirant is so weak that he is incapable of persistent, daily, unchanging compliance with the requirements and fails to render that application, which would be the guarantee of a dubious success. Hence, in these cases, no danger exists. We're so silly that no danger exists because we're dumb and lazy. I mean, it's the truth. It's crazy. But if somebody were persistent and the opposite, then it could be dangerous, right? So we're going to go through, what is real here. Many occult groups exploit the subject in order to build up mystery and to hold out inducements to the unwary, or give their adherents something to do and thus gain kudos for themselves as learned and well-trained, as learned and well-trained occultists. Anyone can teach breathing exercises. It's largely a matter of periodic in-breathing and exhalation, time and space, according to the wish of the teacher. Where there is persistence and effort, results will be achieved, and these will usually be undesirable because the average teacher emphasizes the technique of the breath and not the ideas which, upon the energy which that breath engenders, should take form in the life of the disciple. So you're arousing energy and forces and sending them out into motion that probably are going to go to the lower chakras and excite the wrong centers and create an unfavorable circumstance potentially very easily. And that's the way that it seems here. That's what he's saying. Let's not do that. You can excite the wrong areas, and energy follows, and it's going to build up, and then next thing you know, you're in a weird situation. The entire science of the breath is built around the use of the sacred word, the Om. The use of the word is intended to be confined to those aspirants who are earnestly pledged to tread the way, but it has been passed on, and its use enjoined by many unscrupulous teachers, particularly those swamis who come from India, pose as holy men and get the silly women of the Occident into their clutches. The word is then used with no spiritual intent, but simply as a sound which, carried on the breath, produces psychic results which indicate to the gullible their deep spirituality. The trouble is that breathing is inevitably related to the Om, but the effects are dependent upon motive and inner fixed intention. The Oriental, unless he has attained the fourth or fifth initiation, has no true understanding of the Occidental or of his mechanism and equipment, which, as the result of a civilization and a mode of living, differs widely from that of the Oriental. In the East, the problem of the teacher or guru is to take negatively polarized people and make them positive. In the West, the races are as a whole positive in attitude and need no such training as is rightly given to the Oriental. What exactly do I mean when I make this statement? I mean that in the East, the will factor, the quality of the first aspect, is absent. The Oriental, particularly the inhabitant of India, lacks will, dynamic incentive, and the ability to exert that inner pressure upon himself, which will produce definite results. That is why that particular civilization is so unadaptable to modern civilization. And that is why the people of India make so little progress along the lines of regulated municipal and national life, and why they are so behind the times as far as modern civilized living is concerned. Generalizing, the Occidental is positive and needs the directive force of the soul and can produce it with very little teaching. In the Aryan race, a fusion is today taking place between the will aspect, the mind, and the brain. This is not so in the Orient. It will be so later. So, and this is why the teachings of the Orient or of the East are not the best teachings for the Western student. Nobody said this isn't true. There isn't truth in this stuff. We're saying this is a teaching. This is it. This is different. We're going backwards if we're really adopting those practices. We're setting ourselves back, and this needs to be recognized. But the problem is, it needs to be recognized by the gurus in India who can't. Generally, most of them won't be able to recognize it. That's another problem. So we got a kind of a dilemma. We're at an impasse here in a sense, until we can spread these teachings, these more progressive, more evolved teachings for this particular race, this group, this Eastern group, or I'm sorry, Western, the Occident. Yeah. Sorry, I got a phone call there. It's just so it's just it's just more it's more motivation for us, honestly. Like this is more motivation. It should let you all know also that you're on the right path, essentially, certainly, and you're just stay the course, and really arrange the focus, our focus, to really centralize our instruction to this material. This is really where it's at for us, and it later on it may not be in these exact words with some of it. It may have some new updated twist. I don't see necessarily why so much. That won't. I think these terms are perfectly understandable, but it's going to evolve, and it's going to become more advanced. The teachings will become deeper and more advanced, and this is only material for what we can grasp now in this generation. This is for us. Now the next generation may require much more advanced, deeper teachings than this. So this is what we can grasp now. This is what we can use to invoke what's necessary now for where we're at here, and this is great. So let's stay focused, stay the course with Master DK's teachings here. All right, so on to the breath. Continuing with the breath, the only factor which makes the breath effective is the thought, the intent, and the purpose which lie behind it. In this statement, you have the clue to the dynamic useful breathing exercises. Unless there is a clear appreciation of purpose, unless the disciple knows just what he is doing as he practices esoteric breathing, and unless the significance of the words "energy follows thought" is understood, breathing exercises are a sheer waste of time and can be dangerous. From this, it can be gathered that only when there is an alliance between breathing and thinking will results be possible. And, again, I'm not surprised this energy follows thought comes right up here. But as we see, it can be dangerous, and we have to guard our thoughts and really, be careful of what we're creating, essentially. So behind this lies a third and even more important factor, the will. Therefore, the only person who can safely and usefully practice breathing exercises is the man whose will is active, his spiritual will, and therefore the will of the spiritual triad. Okay, so this is a pretty advanced level here. So any disciple who is in process of building the Antakarana can begin to use with care directed breathing exercises. But in the last analysis, it is only the initiate of the third degree, initiates of the third degree who are coming under monadic influence, who can properly and successfully employ this form of life direction and reach effective results. This is fundamentally true. However, a beginning has to be made, and to this effort, all true disciples are invited. If all the implications in the above paragraph are considered, it will be apparent that the disciple has to establish as a preliminary step a direct relation between his brain, his mind, and the will aspect of the spiritual triad. In other words, the negative receptor of thought, the brain, the agent of the will, the mind, and the triad itself have to be brought into contact with each other via the antikarana. When such a relation exists or is beginning to be established, then breathing exercises can safely and profitably be attempted. You see, my brother, only the directed will, using the organized rhythmic breath as its agent, can control the centers and produce an ordered purpose in life. Therefore, it is the dominating idea or line of mental activity with which the disciple must be concerned as he performs a breathing exercise. This idea must embody some purpose, some planned activity, and some recognized goal before the breath, which will engineer or implement it, is generated, assembled, sent forth, and thus becomes the carrier of power. This has to be done upon the wings of conscious intention. If I may here speak symbolically, I would urge you to read these last sentences with frequency because they concern the science of the breath and hold the clue to needed work. This science is primarily and fundamentally concerned with ideas as formulated into the clear thought forms and thus condition the life of the disciple upon etheric levels. From there, they eventually condition his physical plane life. I have no intention here of giving any breathing exercises which disciples or aspirants could use, or more probably misuse. Their first responsibility is to become aware of the impulses within themselves which could galvanize the centers into activity and so produce conditions and events upon the physical plane. When these are clear and firmly established in the mind consciousness of the disciple, nothing can stop their emergence in due time into the light of day, but they must follow an ordered process of gestation and of timed appearance. When there is true idealism, right thought, plus an understanding of the vehicle of expression and the world of forces into which the idea has to be launched, then the student can safely follow certain scheduled breathing exercises, and the second phase, or the result of sound rhythmic breathing, will appear. This is inspiration. Oh, yeah, very nice. Breathing exercises, my brother, have a purely physiological effect, not impelled or motivated by directed thought. And when they are not the result of an aspirant attaining and adhering to a point of attention, they have a purely physiological effect when not impelled or motivated by directed thought, and when they are not the result of the aspirant attaining and adhering to a point of tension. Steadily, attention, intention, isn't that cool? Intention. All right. Steadily, whilst the process of inhalation and exhalation is being carried forward, a clear line of active thinking must be preserved so that the breath, as it is sent out, is qualified and conditioned by some idea. It is here that the average aspirant fails so often. He is usually so intensely preoccupied with the process of directing breathing and so expectant of some phenomenal results that the living purpose of the breath is forgotten. This is to energize and add quality to the life of the centers through the medium of some projected and presented thought, expressing some sensed and determined idea. Where this background of idealistic thought is lacking, when the results of the breath will be practically nil, or where there are results of any kind under these circumstances, they will be in no way concerned with thought, but will be psychic in nature. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. That seems to make sense to me. They can then produce lasting psychic trouble, for the emanating source of the activity is astral, and the projected energy goes to the centers below the diaphragm, thus feeding the lower nature, enriching and strengthening its astral content, and thereby enhancing any deepening glamour. The result can also be physiological, producing the stimulation of the etheric body, leading to the strengthening of the physical nature. This often leads to serious results, for the breath is carried to the centers, which should be in process of elevation, as it is esoterically called. This increases their physical potency, feeds the physical appetites, and makes the task of the aspirant much harder, as he seeks to sublimate the lower nature and anchor or focus the life of the centers above the diaphragm or in the head. Glamour and Maya are then increased, and for the life in which these exercises are misapplied, the aspirant remains in a static and unprofitable condition. As he breathes in or inhales, he draws the breath from within his own aura, his auric ring pass not. He feeds the lower nature and sets up a vicious circle within himself, which strengthens day by day until he is completely enmeshed by the glamour and Maya, which he is constantly establishing and reestablishing. We're recycling our own nonsense, if you will, at that point. The lower centers are steadily vitalized and become extremely active, and the point of tension from which the aspirant then works is found in the personality and is not focused in relation to the soul. The consciousness of the uniqueness of special breathing and the expectancy of phenomenal results far out all thought, except the lower reactions of a common monastic nature. Emotion is fostered, and the power of the astral body is tremendously increased. Very frequently also, the physiological results are potent and noticeable, such as a great chest development and the muscular strengthening of the diaphragm. Something of this can be seen in the case of operatic singers. Singing, as now taught, is an expression of some of the lower aspects of the breath, and the breathing in the case of the above vocalist produces much breast development, intensifying emotionalisms, producing instability in the life expression, which is often referred to as temperament, and keeps the singing aspect entirely astral in nature. There is a higher and better mode of song, actuated by a difference in the point of tension and involving a breathing process which draws the needed energy upon the breath from the sources higher and far more extensive than those normally used. This will produce the inspiration, which will involve the whole man and not simply his emotional reaction to the theme of his song and his audience. This will bring into being a new mode and type of singing and of breathing based on a form of mental breathing, which will carry energy and consequent inspiration from sources without the personality aura. The time for this is not yet. My words will be little understood today, but the singing in the next century will be by those who will know how to tap the reservoirs of inspiration by means of a new method and technique in breathing. These techniques and exercises will be taught to start with in the new and coming schools of esotericism. Inspiration is a process of qualifying, vitalizing, and stimulating the reaction of the personality via the centers to that point of tension where the soul control becomes present and apparent. It is the mode whereby energy from the soul can flood the personality life, can sweep through the centers, expelling that which hinders, ridding the aspirant of all remaining glamours in Maya, and perfecting an instrument whereby the music of the soul and later the musical quality of the hierarchy can be heard. Forget not that sound permeates all forms. The planet itself has its own note or sound. Each minute atom also has its sound. Each form can be evoked into music, and each human being has his peculiar chord, and all chords contribute to the great symphony which the hierarchy and humanity are playing and playing now. Every spiritual group has its own tune, if I may employ so inappropriate a word, and the groups which are in process of collaborating with the hierarchy make music ceaselessly. This rhythm of sound and this myriad of chords and notes blend with the music of the hierarchy itself, and this is a steadily enriching symphony. As the centuries slip away, all these sounds slowly unite and are resolved into each other until someday the planetary symphony which Sumat Kumara is composing will be completed, and our Earth will then make a notable contribution to the great chords of the solar system. And this is a part intrinsic and real of the music of the spheres. Then, as the Bible says, the sons of God, the planetary logoi, will sing together. This, my brother, will be the result of right breathing, of controlled and organized rhythm, of true, pure thought, and of correct relation between all parts of chorus. Think out this theme as a meditation exercise and gain inspiration thereby, surely. All right, we're going to get into the technique of indifference now. I know this has been a little bit long, but we're going to do this. I have in my other books given much information about the etheric body and the centers, major and minor, which are to be found within its radius. There is a tendency among students to identify the centers with the physical body and their thinking, and not so clearly with the etheric body. This concerns location in the majority of cases and is a mistake. Aspirants would do well to avoid any concentration at all upon the physical body and learn gradually to shift their focus of attention into the etheric body. Necessarily, the physical body is active and potent, but increasingly it should be regarded as an automaton influenced and directed by, one, the vital body and the forces of Maya, or by inspiration emanating from points of spiritual tension. Okay, got that? Those are two different things there, very different things. The astral vehicle and the forces of glamour, or sentient conscious love emanating from the soul. Also two very different things there. The mind and the forces of illusion, or by illumination coming from higher sources than the life in the three worlds. Okay, very good. And then the soul as the vehicle of monadic expression until such time as the antikarana is built, that bridge in mental manner, which will eventually link the monad and the personality. One of the problems which disciples have to solve is the source of the incentive, impulses, impressions, or inspiration, which via the etheric body sweep the physical vehicle into activity upon the physical plane, thus giving a demonstration of the quality, purpose, and point of tension of the incarnating man and manifesting the nature of the man as he is at any particular point upon the ladder of evolution. According to the tensions and impulses indicated, will be the activity of the centers. You can see, therefore, how much that I teach reverses the usual occult procedures. I teach no mode of awakening the centers because right impulse, steady reaction to the higher impulsions, and the practical recognition of the source of inspiration will automatically and safely swing the centers into needed and appropriate activity. Very telling right there. That's a huge statement that really does separate Master DK's teachings, instruction from the others that we see all the time. Oh, how to turn on your third eye, how to heal all these centers, how to, all of this stuff is really kind of dangerous and can be very dangerous. This is the sound method of development. So here's our problem. This might be many people's problems. It is slower, but leads to no premature development and produces a rounded out unfoldment. It enables the aspirant to become truly the observer and to know with surety what he is doing. It brings the centers one by one to a point of spiritual responsiveness and then establishes the ordered and cyclic rhythm of a controlled lower nature. This is not a sell. I mean, you could call this marketing. This is what needs to be understood. If you're going to put, a couple of practices side by side, which before you take on a practice, we should, this should be a part of that information and knowledge as to what we're going to get into. That breathing exercises may eventually find a place in the training of the disciple is true and possible, but they will be self-initiated as a result of rhythmic living and a constant right use of the sacred word, the Om. When, for instance, a disciple in meditation sounds the Om 7 times, it is the equivalent of a breathing exercise. When he can send the energy thus generated on the wings of conscious planned thought to one or other of the centers, he is bringing about changes and readjustments within the mechanism which handles force. And when this can be carried out with ease and with the mind held at a point of thoughtful tension, then the disciple is well on the way to shifting his entire focus of attention away from the world of illusion, glamour, and Maya and into the realm of the soul and the world of the clear, cold light and into the kingdom of God. When he also adds to this an understanding and the practice of the technique of indifference, he stands free and liberated and is essentially at all times the observer and user of the apparatus of manifestation. And also in this, you can see where the dweller on the threshold is, right? We can see that by looking at this. That's what's preventing us from getting to this point. So what is this technique? What is indifference? I wonder, brother of mine, if you understand the significance of this word indifference. It means in reality the achieving of a neutral attitude towards that which is regarded as the not self. It involves a repudiation of similarity. It marks the recognition of a basic distinction. It signifies refusal to be identified with anything save the spiritual reality as far as that is sensed and known at any given point in time and space. It is, therefore, a much stronger and vital thing than what is usually meant when the word is used. It is active repudiation without any concentration upon that which is repudiated. That's a pretty advanced level. I don't want to say advanced in any super meaning, but to get to that point, this is good. It's an act of repudiation without any concentration upon that which is repudiated. We're just looking past all of this. It's just total indifference. This is where the East kind of meets the West. This is a more Advaita type of a thing right here, right? That is a statement of moment and warrants your careful consideration. It is considered with the point of tension from which the observing disciple or aspirant is working. The point of tension becomes the emanating source of some type of energy. And this pours down into and through the etheric body without being in any way affected by Maya or by the concentration of diverse forces of which the etheric body is ever composed. Indifference, technically understood, signifies direct descent from there to here, without deviation or distortion. The manifesting entity, the disciple, stands steady and firm at this point of tension, and his first step is, therefore, to ascertain where that is, on what plane it is found, and what is the strength of the tension upon which he has to depend. This is deep right here. We should definitely spend some time focused in on this. The next step is to discover if that which he seeks to convey to the physical body and thus produce its effects upon the outer world of experiment experience is distorted by illusion of any kind, arrested in its expression by glamour, or liable to be sidetracked by uncontrolled forces and by the Maya which these produce. Wow, this is great. This is great. Man, we're just learning so much in such a short amount of time here. This he ascertains not by identifying himself stage by stage of descent with the hindrance and possible obstructions, but by intensifying his point of tension by the constant recollection of the truth that he is the self and not the not self, and by a process of projection. This projection is defined as sending of energy, qualified and recognized, from the point of tension direct and undeviatingly to the vital body, from whence it can find its way to the 7 centers of control. This is a communication. We're building up communication patterns here. We're learning to communicate, if I may so say. It is at this point that he applies the technique of indifference, for if he does not, it is at this point which he applies the technique of indifference, for if he does not, that which he is seeking to express may be held up and arrested by etheric force or by the veils of Maya. He works consequently from a point of intense concentration. He refuses any attachment to any form or plane as he projects the energy into and through the 3 worlds. When he discovers any arresting or sidetracking of progress through active illusion or glamour, he detaches himself consciously from such contacts and embraces himself for the final stage of indifference or repudiation of all forces, except those which he consciously and with purpose is seeking to use upon the physical plane. This is our experience here. And if this hasn't happened to us yet, apparently this is the way it's going to go. So now we know we can help this process along. So in the last analysis, my brother, the point of tension for the average disciple would be found on the mental levels involving the illumined mind and a growing soul contact. He will be able to then to see clearly in the light of the soul with a developed sense of values he can consequently dispel the illusion. He'll be able to project light consciously onto the astral plane and can thus dissipate glamour. He will be able to pour light energy through the etheric body and anchor the light or energy in appropriate centers, because there will be complete indifference or non-identification with Maya. Where the initiate is concerned, the process is carried on at first from a point of tension within the soul and later from a point of tension in the spiritual triad. In all cases, however, once within the ring pass knot of the three worlds, the directing energy produces results as outlined in this book and brings about the dispelling of illusion, dissipation of glamour, overcoming of Maya. It sounds fairly simple and easy of accomplishment as the aspirant reads these fairly simple elucidations of a difficult process, but that in itself is a delusion. Age-long identification with the form side of life is not easily overcome, and the task ahead of the disciple is a long and arduous one, but one which promises eventual success, provided there is clear thinking, earnest purpose, and planned scientific work. This is not easy work, obviously, and it's simply put, easier said than done, though. What a great section. It did take a long while for us to get through that. I think it's well worth it to absorb this. And I think we know what indifference is. Now we can see how important it is. We can look at these triangles and see, keep these things in mind and try to work with this, right? And try to identify our the energies coming in, or the soul force and the spiritual eye and the Ageless center and the integrated personality. Like, we need, this is stuff this is work that needs to be accomplished, and then the communication needs to be established. We need to be thinking about our etheric body and our centers and how this energy is moving and directed and guided. I mean, there's just so incredibly much here. It's just so amazing. Watching our breath. I mean, there's a lot of, be careful not to recycle through our own aura and just keep the Maya going, the illusion going. So there's just a lot here we need to really think about. I hope this is good for you. I know we're gonna, at some point we're probably gonna re-engage on all of this and come back to it and maybe read this entire book again down the line. And we'll just come back to it and hit it again as we grow with this material. But all right, we're gonna call it. It's a long one, but pretty great stuff. So we're going to finish this book up here probably on the next, probably tomorrow. I think, yeah, and we'll finish the book up tomorrow. Okay, very good. Have a good day. See you soon.